We're here to talk about the Nickelodeon Original Movie Rags, but please walk with me for a bit. The first time I ever encountered the term, "it insists upon itself," was from a quote tweet commenting on a post of someone's fancy French toast. In response to the photo, it said, "It insists upon itself. Food for the eyes rather than the soul." Most of the replies were clowning on the user for critiquing a seemingly delicious-looking French toast with an interesting flavor combo, but I can see where the user was coming from, to a degree. The term was popularized by Seth MacFarlane in an episode of Family Guy, where the character of Peter Griffin admits that he didn't quite like The Godfather, with his explanation being,
Couldn't get into it.
Explain yourself. What didn't you like about it?
It insists upon itself, Lois.
What?
It insists upon itself.
What does that even mean?
Some people have gone on to say that the term is useful for describing pieces of media that are pretentious and expect the audience to be awed by its existence by birthright, implying that there is a subtext of unearned importance present within the weave of the text itself. Others, including MacFarlane himself, suggest that the phrase is just utter nonsense and is used specifically to deflect on not getting or understanding a piece of media, or to imply that the person hasn't given the movie a fair chance. Peter Griffin, in the context of the scene, hasn't even finished The Godfather. MacFarlane claims that he first heard the term from his film history teacher as an explanation for why they didn't like The Sound of Music. I agree more with MacFarlane on this one, even though I'm not particularly fond of his persona as a celebrity, and I've never even seen an episode of any show or movie he's ever created, mainly because I'm just not that into the American adult animation scene as a whole, but that's besides the point. I think the phrase is a good example of word salad nonsense that functions perfectly within the scene in Family Guy, which is an infamous cutaway gag, since Peter Griffin is supposed to be an idiot of a character that usually holds bad opinions, as far as I'm aware, since again, I haven't actually seen the show. I know the character on occasion speaks for the writer's true opinions, using Peter Griffin's voice as a lampshade to share how they truly feel on a stage much larger than an angry tweet or a water cooler discussion ever could have. Over time, the term has actually been adopted by the Peter Griffins of the world in the exact same way with no irony present, probably feeling like they were being seen or represented by this rant on The Godfather to a degree. This is a problem for pretty much every satirical father figure character in a family sitcom, which I know that this show is satirizing, and it probably will continue into infinity until someone puts a stop to all this nonsense. I think of Al Bundy and Archie Bunker and I weep openly. And this doesn't describe every person using this term, by the way, of course, but for the people who function as faux intellectuals and crusade against what they see as pretension, against things they just can't understand from an AI overview alone, I'm attempting to call you out here. It's okay to not like The Godfather, by the way. Gen X dudes have been really annoying about that series for decades now, and I can understand the exhaustion people have surrounding that specific conversation as a whole. This is a touchy subject for me of all people to be talking about, glass houses and such, especially since I primarily talk about made-for-TV movies on the internet. I also like so-called pretentious movies as well, and I enjoy talking and thinking about them in my everyday life. I'm one of those assholes who will yap about The Social Network to anybody who will listen to me, and have conversations about it when given the chance. However, my favorite movie of all time is, of course, My Babysitter's a Vampire, a made-for-TV movie from a Canadian animation network that would eventually get absorbed by Cartoon Network. Check out the literal hours of content I have on that series on my channel, if you're interested. I say all this to provide context for my complicated feelings on the subject, as the person who likes pretentious shit like The Lighthouse in my free time and during the off-season, yet has made a brand for myself of talking about Disney Channel original movies and other films of the sort. By the way, if you like watching me cook, check out the Decom Foods blog on Tumblr. I will link it in the description below. If you don't have Tumblr, you can just look at it as a website. So I'm here bringing up all of this discourse to try and argue that the term "it insists upon itself" could be used in a different context, separated from any form of detecting pretension, and instead to imply a piece of media is purely understanding itself for what it is, insisting on the viewer meeting the context of the text where it's at. This seems to be a difficult thing for certain movie viewers to do, which is why films of this nature immediately upon birth are unfairly dogged on, or not discussed in a serious context whatsoever. My goal is to change that. Again, like I said about The Godfather, you don't have to like rags, which I promise this video is actually about, but I want people who watch movies of any and all parameters to understand what the movie is trying to do, decipher exactly what it's aiming for, and then assess the film on whether you liked it or not based on that core understanding of the product. In my opinion, if you're not willing to do all of that, then be quiet and stop making me read your garbage movie reviews. I'll start commenting on your reviews with a score from 1 out of 10 if you keep up with it, so watch out. I don't mind it. You know what? I'm going to start. I don't like French toast. I'm not a French toast person, but this might make me consider making French toast more often. I don't think I would infuse the tea into the milk because that's just too long of a process. Oh, did you guys see my Fred t-shirt? So, Rags, am I right? Here's the thing about Rags. It is a movie that I love deeply and have a lot of thoughts on, and even had like some vague notes for a possible video from like years ago, probably when I first started scripting the previous video that was on my channel where I ranked every Cinderella story movie from that Warner Brothers anthology, which I have lots to say on about that reception of that video, but we'll get there in a little bit. I have a few more things I want to say first. First of all, I'm actually recording this during the daytime, which is an extremely rare occurrence for me, so that's why there's lots of glare in my glasses. I apologize. Second of all, I've been having the worst allergies of my life for some reason the past, like, 34 to 72 hours, and so because of that, I kind of sound like I have two pretzels up my nose. I just decided, you know what, I don't fucking care how I look on camera. I'm gonna stop bothering trying to put effort into my presentation, because clearly I'm just going to ruin it by having extreme allergy attacks. If I slowly become more low energy throughout this video, just know it's because I've taken multiple Benadryl to try and make sure that doesn't happen while I'm recording. But anyways, for those who don't know, Rags is a movie that came out on Nickelodeon and is actually a Nickelodeon Original Movie. Now, Nickelodeon doesn't have the same sort of reputation as Disney Channel has for its original movies. It's actually an opinion of mine, not really super fleshed out or developed quite yet, but it's an opinion of mine that eventually Nickelodeon got a little bit jealous of the fact that Disney Channel was absolutely killing it in the made-for-TV movie department, and so they kind of tried to build up their own similar catalog in the 2010s. Specifically with movies that starred actors from television shows that were very popular on their network, in the same way that Disney Channel had done, as like a big effort of like cross promotion. And to a degree, that is what this movie is at the end of the day, because there were two very popular television shows that these two main characters were a part of. The actors were, that is, not the actual fictional characters, the actors. Keke Palmer was famously in True Jackson VP, which I cannot remember if it had just ended at that point or was coming close to ending by the time this movie came out. And Max famously was in How to Rock. I say famously because no one fucking knows about this show. I talked about it in a very, very old video that looks like garbage about Swindle, which is another Nickelodeon original movie, and is probably my favorite out of all of them. It is genuinely so good. Two other actors from How to Rock were in that Nickelodeon original movie, and so now Max is in this one. I think someone has made a video on How to Rock, so I'm glad there's a little bit more information about it out there, so go check that out if you want to know more. I saw it as it aired on television at the time, because I literally watched every single ounce of television that any network had made from like 5-year span pretty consistently. I say this a lot throughout my videos, but I feel the need to point it out again, that like, yes, you may be concerned for the kids and their brain rot right now, but just know that like since Gen X, people have been rotting their brains looking at screens 24/7. It's just that now there's less and less friction as time goes on. So obviously that changes the context and it warrants having the conversation. But yeah, I was also absolutely burning my retinas and rotting my brain to television shows way back in the day instead of like YouTube and TikTok or whatever. Again, I haven't done much research into the Nickelodeon original movie quite yet, but as far as I'm aware, this wasn't really something that they were doing in the 90s and 2000s when they were occasionally making original movies. More often than not, what they would do is they would bank their 1-hour specials from television shows as movies. So stuff like I Party with Victorious, I Go to Japan. I can't think of any non-iCarly examples off the top of my head. The Jimmy, Timmy, Power Hour, that kind of stuff were all considered original movies. Famously, Nickelodeon did this a lot, and Disney Channel only did this really once in like 2015, 2016 with the Tangled Ever After pilot. I say all that to say that I'm actually very interested in talking about Nickelodeon original movies and possibly making a video where I rank and review every Nickelodeon original movie like I did for the DCOM, and it's a much less daunting task, famously because of all of the like movie specials that are included, as well as the fact that there are only 87. which is a lot less than 120. Not by much, but by a little bit. It's around 2/3 the length of what the Disney Channel ranking was. But anyways, before we get into a plot synopsis of this movie, feel free to skip this whole rant if you're not interested and you haven't seen my previous video. You can also go check out my previous video. But I wanted to discuss a little bit of some of the conversation that's happened around the topics in that video, because they're very much important for understanding how I'm going to be analyzing Rags in this video. So one thing that actually inspired me to dust off my old notes about Rags and make an entire video about it was the fact that a bunch of people were commenting under that previous video asking me why I hadn't talked about that movie in that video, as well as a bunch of other Cinderella adaptation movies. And I thought it was quite obvious, and I thought I made it very clear in the opening introduction of that video that I was specifically talking about an anthology series that Warner Brothers specifically had made with 6 movies in its history. And I fear just a little bit, just a wee bit, that maybe people's critical thinking skills and ability to pay attention has waned so drastically that I can say something in a video, like just once, and not have to say it multiple times, and people will not get it. They just will not. It will just not absorb into their brains. If people were actually expecting me to review every single movie adaptation of the Cinderella fairy tale, then I don't know why they thought it would only be like an hour and some change long. But to be fair, everyone's confusion in the comments probably did boost the video in the algorithm, because it's one of my best performing videos in a long time. So that also concerns me, just a wee bit, but you know, we'll move forward. Rags is a Nickelodeon movie made by Paramount. Paramount is like the big company that like is owned by Nickelodeon and Viacom and all that. And all of those Cinderella movies that I talked about in my previous video were made by Warner Brothers. Specifically, the first movie was theatrically released and the rest were straight to home video. But most people probably saw them and recognized them from their airing on Disney-owned channels, which is why I was so fascinated with the series in the first place, because it starred famous actors who were made famous by Disney and Disney Channel, and were most widely seen on networks owned by Disney, like ABC Family, now called Freeform, and Disney Channel and ABC and all that stuff, yet they had no affiliation with Disney in its creation whatsoever. I said this in the video, and it went over people's head. That is also why I am so interested in talking about Rags, because Rags, famously, is made by Nickelodeon, which is a well-known, like, competition with Disney Channel. Also, Keke Palmer was literally in a Disney Channel original movie a couple years before this movie was made. The layers are just building so much more. The big 3 of children's entertainment that you could call them, Cartoon Network, Disney Channel, and Nickelodeon, to a degree, we're all aware that they were somewhat competing with each other for the attention of children, and specifically Nickelodeon and Disney Channel kind of had a little bit of beef throughout the 2000s and 2010s. And so you could see this movie as like a catalog in that whole realm. Because obviously it's not commenting on Disney Channel, but it's commenting on Disney, the company as a whole, and adapting one of their animated movies. Which leads me to my next point. The next thing that people got really misconstrued about, and I was kind of shocked to see how misconstrued people were getting, and to be fair, I was trying to argue something a little bit more complex than maybe what people were expecting from a video like that. But the next biggest problem that people were commenting about in that video of mine was that I thought that Disney created the story of Cinderella, which is absolutely absurd. I say in the video, and I partially started passive-aggressively somewhat commenting the time code under people's comments who were saying this, because I was actually getting just a wee bit frustrated about this. Again, just a wee bit. Showing the exact point in the video where I said, I know that Cinderella is a larger fairy tale with many different origin points, and the thing about a fairy tale is that there is no actual origin point, okay? And I will talk about this in a little bit. I know that the Disney animated movie Cinderella is an adaptation, okay? I know that. But what I was trying to argue in that opening part of the video was that those movies made by Warner Brothers were not trying to adapt the fairy tale of Cinderella. They were specifically trying to adapt Cinderella, the Disney animated movie, because that is the most culturally, like, place to pinpoint the story onto right now. And that is the thing that they were interested in subverting. And to a degree, I only partially believe that, because then my next argument off of that, these were all building blocks to get to my main point, which is that Cinderella is more of an idea of a character, of an archetype now, than she is an actual real-life character that exists. I have visuals to represent this, because apparently this is something that people just cannot grasp in their brains, probably also while they're doing the dishes or their crochet project or whatever, which is fine, it's okay if you're doing those things, but you just can't comment the fact that you didn't pay attention to the video under my video, and not have me be mad about it at least, okay? That's all I'm trying to say. And I promise I will never talk about being angry at YouTube comments on my YouTube channel ever again, okay? I just need to get this off my chest, and then we'll move on. Oh man, I did not realize recording here that I don't have space. I don't have like blank space to put up my visuals on. Let's see, okay. We're gonna move the frame up a bit. Is this okay? Okay, let's hope this works. So first of all, we have Cinderella. Stay. We have Cinderella, the folk tale. It's still not close enough. Okay, let's just, there we go. This is the fairy tale of Cinderella. This visual represents that. This is the actual story, as in like, you know, Cinderella is a poor girl covered in cinders. That's why her name's Cinderella, by the way, because she has to like she has to sleep in the chimney, essentially, so she's surrounded by cinders. So it's like a mean name that her stepsisters have given to her. The modern equivalent of calling someone Cinderella would be like dusty bitch. And then next we have the idea of Cinderella. This is the version that Disney, the animated movie, created and has then, you know, pulled out of the animated movie and have created like this altruistic character who is deserving of love and affection because of her altruistic nature. And also she's blonde hair, blue-eyed, and has a big beautiful gown. This idea of Cinderella, it looks like shit because I made sure to not put her in her blue dress, which is the wrong dress. She's not in the blue dress here, but also you can't fucking see her. Whatever, I'll fix it in post. I'll turn up the contrast or something. This and this are not the same anymore because this has been such a reinterpreted and like morphed version of this that it deserves to be its own separate category. And then next we have the modern TV adaptations of Cinderella. Of course, here I have a photo of Charlie. Look at him, he's in a silver suit because the dress is silver. And I hope to get across in this video that these three things are completely separate. And this has nothing to do with this anymore. These two things are so separated from each other that they're not even, this isn't doing anything with this anymore, okay? This is commenting on this. This is the idea of Cinderella, of perfect feminine altruism, okay? And this is the actual character of Cinderella that exists. And I would even put the Cinderella that's actually in the Disney animated movie into this category because she's an actual character with like wants and desires and like an arc. And this is like a girl who you should aspire to be and should inspire you to buy a lot of merchandise from Disney, the corporation. It is all of the things that the character of Cinderella is supposed to represent boiled down into the most easily marketed. I'm tempted to just insert my rant from my previous video into this video again, so hopefully people fucking understand what I was trying to say. I definitely do realize that the Disney Princess brand is well worth its criticisms. I mean, it was everywhere, and it did a really good job of smoothing down any nuance these characters had in their original movies, and turning them into the exact rigid and regressive archetype that BuzzFeed and all those blogs loved to criticize so much. So when people made those silly Disney princess memes, they weren't making them about the original movies. Again, because they were 4 the last time they saw them. So what the Cinderella story movies are really doing is responding to the backlash of this oversaturation of Disney princess marketing by making more Disney princess content, albeit in a different medium and from a different network. Because apparently capitalism is going to be the thing to fix all of this. Yay! What I'm trying to say is that I completely understand that there is plenty to criticize about Cinderella and what she represents as a Disney princess and her place within American pop culture. But also, most of these arguments make no sense at all and just piss me off. So my problem lies in the fact that these are modern adaptations of the specific movie Cinderella, but are actually secretly commentaries on the idea of Cinderella that people held in pop culture in the 21st century. So these are two very different ideas that are clashing in my mind a lot. So these movies, including all the 6 movies I talked about in my previous video, and the one we're talking about today, Rags, all of these movies are attempting to comment on this by maybe pulling small little things that they found from going back and trying to read this, but in all reality are commenting on this. They're commenting on the version of Cinderella that Disney has created to market femininity to children to drain their bank accounts. And so what does it mean to then put a twist on the story, to put a twist on it? What if he's actually a character like Charlie instead of what you understand the idea of Cinderella to be in the modern day? That was the point I was trying to make in that video, and no one cared. Oh god. So I hope that makes sense, and I hope you're paying attention, because yes, it will be on the test at the end of the video. I actually do think that Rags really does matter as an adaptation, which again is why I'm making the video in the first place. I feel like so many creators just make videos on things because they know it will do well, and they're like, I don't know why I'm talking about this thing because you weirdos will click on it. No, I have actual thoughts, okay? And I'm one of those weirdos who would click on a video about Rags, by the way. And by specifically gender bending the character, it creates a lot of interesting adaptational quirks that we can talk about forever, basically, but I'll try to restrain myself just a little bit. But before we get into all of that, I want to make sure you guys actually know what this video is about. So I'm going to give a brief plot synopsis in case you may have forgotten some of the plot lines from the last time you watched this movie, which is probably when you were 12. Rags follows Charlie Prince, a down-on-his-luck kid who writes songs and sings them in his free time, as he is forced to work and clean at his stepfather's run-down diner every day without pay. First of all, I love that his last name is Prince. You'd think I'd find it too on the nose, but I actually find it very cheesy and charming. Get it? Prince Charming? Anyways. Second of all, at the restaurant that was once owned by Charlie's mother before she died, used to be a more classy dinner and music type place with a grand piano at center stage. But the stepfather sold the piano to buy a karaoke machine, and in the present day, it is extremely run down and has barely any customers. The stepfather has 2 twin sons named Andrew and Lloyd. Their band name is Android, and they perform a pretty bad cover and dance number of the 1980s classic song Word Up. Which is a good song, by the way. This movie may try and convince you that it's secretly bad somehow, but that's just incorrect. Take my word for it. Charlie loves to play his music on the streets of New York, where this movie takes place, for spare change from passerbys and tourists. He's making very small payments to buy back his mother's piano at a pawn shop, which he loves spending his time at and playing music for all of the shoppers. While playing his music on the street, he gains the attention of Sean, a music producer and engineer, played by Drake Bell, which is unfortunate. He is the narrator and fairy godmother insert for the movie, by the way. We cut back and forth between Charlie's life and the other half of this duo, Katie Worth, played by Keke Palmer. I should have mentioned earlier that Charlie's played by Max. He's also pretty well known, I think. We see that Katie Worth is very famous and a successful musician who is currently filming a music video that she doesn't like for her new hit single that she also hates. She wishes to express herself and her creativity more openly, but her father Reginald, who runs her label Majesty Records, wants to ensure her the greatest amount of success as possible, which he thinks means getting her to wear outfits that she doesn't like and singing songs not written by her. He's also played by the Old Spice commercial guy. I'm not sure how notable that is. She's also in a PR relationship with a guy named Finn, played by Avin Jogia, who is putting on a pretty bad British accent in this movie. They've also seemed to have put him in Johnny Depp cosplay and has instructed him to physically act like Jack Sparrow. I forget how much of a frenzy the Pirates of the Caribbean movies were when they were still releasing. Majesty Records is hosting a song submission contest, where everyday people can send in their CD and have the chance of them being picked to be signed by the label. Charlie's stepfather has him send in his stepbrother's demo for the contest, and while he's at the label headquarters, he sees that there's an opening for a janitor position. Drake Bell sees Charlie filling out the application and makes sure he gets hired. Charlie and Katie cross paths quite often throughout the movie as he works at their label headquarters, and she has casual banter with him, while her peers dismiss him as staff and don't treat him as nicely. Also, while cleaning one of the recording booths, he decides to joke around and sing into one of the microphones, thinking no one's around. But Drake Bell is there, and he hears it and actually starts recording him, and then the two of them produce a whole demo of songs together. Katie writes her own music in private, and Charlie eventually finds out through the art of pratfall, and eventually they end up hanging out around New York. He takes Katie to the pawn shop where they sing together at the piano, and Charlie encourages her to sing her original songs out on the street to prove that they really are that good. She has a lot of fun doing this until she's recognized on the bus and is hounded by people for autographs and pictures, which is a common situation for her throughout the film when she just tries to be normal. She gives Charlie an invitation to an upcoming masquerade party where the winner of the song contest will be announced and will perform. And his stepfather then steals the invitation to bring his sons to the event to redeem the fact that they didn't win the contest because of course they didn't. Charlie then has to sneak into the party in a silver suit because the Cinderella dress from the animated movie is silver and not blue. And Drake Bell gives him his CD of the finished demo, giving him the stage name Rags to remind him of his working class origins when he eventually makes it as a big star. This is a bad stage name, not just because it's odd sounding, but because it has horrible searchability, proved by the fact that this movie itself has bad searchability. I literally had to sift through piles of images of actual rags before I could find promo images for this movie when I was making the thumbnail. I was half tempted just to put a stock image of a rag as the thumbnail out of frustration. Charlie, in disguise, dances with Katie and has a charismatic conversation with her before the winner of the contest is announced. The winner apparently has not shown up to perform, so Android takes this moment as their chance to do their word up number in the actual winner's absence, and it goes over very poorly. They get booed off the stage. Charlie, convinced by Drake Bell, who is the DJ for the event, then goes on stage after them and blows the audience away. But he then has to rush away immediately after his performance because his stepfamily are leaving the event early. He then accidentally drops his demo on the way out and kisses Katie. She then collects his CD. The next day, she then goes to Charlie's place to discuss what he's missed at the party and expresses that she needs to find out who Rags is. Charlie tries to tell her that he is Rags, but eventually gives up due to insecurity. He also assumes Katie thinks lowly of him by overhearing only part of a conversation where she speaks ill of him, missing the part where she was only saying that to tell her father that she thinks the opposite of him. And in this conversation, she is again trying to get him to help her find Rags, and he dismisses her, so then she goes out on her own and posts videos asking for a statewide audition. We then also learned that Lloyd has figured out that Charlie is Rags by looking at his shoes, because Charlie writes his signatures on them, but Andrew overhears this and plots to take down and replace Charlie as Rags. Katie then holds auditions to find out who Rags is, and Charlie is locked in a closet by his stepfather to avoid him going on stage and revealing his secret. Andrew eventually reveals himself and pretends to be Rags after finding Charlie's songbook in his bedroom. But after Charlie packs his bags, ready to skip town since he feels like he's lost everything, Katie reveals on stage that she knows Charlie is Rags, noting that he said the same phrase to her while being in disguise and while not being in disguise, which is, "Be you." It's a pretty generic sentiment, but to be fair, he's really the only one who knows about her struggles with authenticity. Charlie then learns he's the real owner of the restaurant and not his stepfather, and Katie is allowed to perform her own music after her father realizes he's been stifling her creative vision. The two then perform a triumphant song at the end with Lloyd as their backup dancer, and the movie wraps up quite quickly. Hello. It is significantly later in the afternoon, and I look significantly more disheveled because I took a nap, because the Benadryl really got to me. I didn't see the Hat Man though, so, I'm fortunate in that sense. But I'm now back to talk about my likes and dislikes now that you know more about the movie. At least I'm assuming you do. You paid attention to what I just said previously. Sorry, it's gonna bug me for the rest of this video. So first of all, something that I don't really like that much is the opening and closing narration. And also cars driving really loudly right outside my window. This is famously one of my movie pet peeves, when there is narration at the beginning and only at the end, like exclusively just to bookend the movies. Because in my opinion, it's a really lazy way to drop exposition and to quickly end the film. I initially wanted to give it a pass because this is a fairy tale adaptation, and so I was kind of excited for there to be a lot of more fairy tale storybook style narration throughout this movie, given by Drake Bell, which is unfortunate. But no, there wasn't any of that. It did the exact thing that I don't like from movies, where it only did it at the beginning and only did it at the end. I understand that the point is that it's a very easy and traditional way to just dump exposition, but also it kind of robs the characters and the story of organic storytelling, and characterization. But at the end of the day, I think I'm going to let the movie get away with it because it kind of functions in a similar way to those Disney animated movies where it has like the storybook open and then the movie start and then have it close at the end of the film. Like, I don't know, maybe it's trying to pay homage to that. I'm going to give the movie the benefit of the doubt. Next thing, it's kind of half a like and half a dislike. I want to get into some of the more adaptational quirks of this project and kind of talk about some things that I actually failed to talk about in my previous video where I talked about 6 Cinderella movies. First of all, something that I don't know how to feel about is that this movie has to have, and all the rest of these movies that have been adaptations of the Cinderella fairy tale, have to have a thing for the character to have that's desirable, because originally, if we're talking about the fairy tale, and to a degree to the Disney movie, glad I left these up on the wall, I can point to them, being beautiful and being virtuous and altruistic were the desirable things about the character. But especially in a movie like this with Rags, where you have a male lead, you kind of can't have that anymore, so you have to come up with a thing, like a specific thing that the character has that the step siblings don't have. And more often than not, because these movies have all been musicals, that thing that the person has is like talent for singing and dancing and such. It's kind of like that in a Disney movie. We are supposed to understand that Cinderella is just more beautiful than the other girls, and also she is more hardworking, so that means that she is deserving of a happy ending. This was in a post-World War II era for the United States, so this was like a big message that a lot of media from that time was trying to push, where all of your hard work and effort and rationing was gonna pay off in the end, and you got to have the big poofy ball gown because you had been stingy with our fabric in the past. But also the Sweet Nightingale song and that whole scene is supposed to imply that also just Cinderella is just better in every single way. The stepsisters have proper musical training and yet they still sound like ass. And Cinderella has to spend all her time scrubbing the floors, yet she still has a better singing voice than them. In my opinion, that angle of the story has kind of become the main thing instead of just a side like it was previously. Next, I want to talk about the siblings, which is something that I like and something I will give Rags credit for, in the sense that it maybe is pulling more from the fairy tale than I give it credit for. A lot of these movies do this as well, where one of the siblings are actually redeemed by the end and end up becoming friends with the Cinderella insert. And this is the case with Lloyd, with Andrew and Lloyd. I did read a couple examples of the Cinderella fairy tale that I could find online, because fairy tales don't have an origin point. Some of you in the comments were like, the Grimm's Brothers Cinderella, which is the original story. There is no such thing as an original fairy tale. Get learnt about it if you're gonna comment about it, is my opinion. Fairy tales were essentially just like stories that grandmothers would riff on to try and get their little German children to fall asleep at night in the middle of winter or whatever. They were just stories that were told around campfires and shared colloquially until eventually some guy decided to write it down in a book, because why not? So that is like the place that we can find out a version of the fairy tale, but basically whatever someone made up on the spot is just as legit as whatever the Grimm's brother wrote down. So in some stories, one of the siblings is nicer than the other, but in others, they're both just equally evil and mean. So it depends on what source you read and where you pull from to find the elements of the story that you want to adapt. And in this movie, they decided to make one of the step-siblings redeemable. Disney also did this, but only in the direct-to-VHS sequels, which I found very fascinating. They redeem Anastasia. An adaptational thing that I love is the way that they dressed this kid. I'll put a better image up on screen other than just this, but like they put him in a silver suit, which is so good. I love the all silver suit, and it is made out of some curtains, which is fun, I guess. And they give him an orange bike. How charming, because originally it's a pumpkin that is turned into like a horse-drawn carriage, and then they turn like the mice and the horses, or like the mules nearby, into like the horse and the carriage boy. I don't know what the person who runs the carriage is called. And so they give him an orange bicycle, and that's supposed to be like his pumpkin or whatever. I think that that's cute and novel. It's like in another Cinderella story where the fairy godmother character has this massive ancient orange van, and it's supposed to be like, they call it the pumpkin, right? It's very cute. And then it breaks down, so that's why she has to run home at midnight kind of thing. I appreciate the little adaptational modern day twists that they do, even if they are quite lame and cheesy. I still think they're very sweet. It's like we're doing a Cinderella adaptation. you know? We might as well get a bit quirky with it. Something that I dislike is when these movies don't include a thing that the Cinderella character leaves behind when they're rushing off. Rags does this well, and they have it be the CD demo of the song. So it's like the song is the thing that that the Prince Charming insert uses to like try and find out who the original person was that they met at the party. I think it was only the last two Cinderella movies in my previous video where they just completely omitted that, and I was so mad about it, and then I didn't even talk about it in the video, which I don't know how that happened. Like in the first one, it's a flip phone. In the second one, it's an MP3 player. Any of y'all know about a Zune? Zune was probably easier to get the rights to say than like iPod or whatever. And then in the third movie, it's a song. Again, the character performs a song for the artist and then has to leave. And then for the fourth movie, it is like a sneaker. It's like a dancing sneaker, but that is more of a red herring. It's not like, in my opinion, that whole moment isn't plot relevant at all. It's more of just like a wink wink nudge nudge, we're doing a Cinderella thing, but the actual story itself doesn't hinge upon it. We already have one too many degrees of separation with If the Shoe Fits, but then with Christmas Wish and Starstruck, that is just completely not present at all. Also, neither of those movies really have a big ball, which is important for the two characters like love story. Christmas Wish does have a big ball at the end, but it's like the finale, the final part of the film, so again, it doesn't function properly. But since we're speaking of the party, we have to talk about the whole masquerade element of it. All of these movies have the character of Cinderella put on some sort of disguise at some point to where the miscommunication happens, where they have to try and find out who the person is, even though they've already met. Again, this is not a problem in the original fairy tale or Disney movie, because the first time that these characters meet is the first time that they fall in love with each other. All of these movies have to have the Cinderella and Prince Charming character grow as like a romantic couple in the same structure of a rom-com. In this movie, I think it works really well, and so I'm okay with that, and I'm, at the end of the day, fine enough with the whole masquerade angle. A masquerade party, I'm assuming, is a common thing that people do. But these movies have it seem like it's a normal and pretty common thing for people to do in parties. A perfectly fine theme to have for a party. So Katie and Charlie have already built up a decent friendly rapport with each other. There's maybe been one or two little romantic angles to their relationship so far, but it's mostly stayed pretty platonic. And then at the masquerade party, I guess because he's in disguise, he feels a little bit more confident sharing his more romantic feelings towards her through their dance, and then he eventually kisses her before running off. But just know that this is something that they've had to fully fabricate and just create in the writer's room, and they're not pulling it, as far as I'm aware, from any fairy tale source of any kind. Not even the Disney movie again. Because these are modern adaptations, I'm assuming they just can't, they just don't feel comfortable with doing a love at first sight thing and having the characters first meet at the ball, like, at all. Because the whole dropping of the glass slipper, or in this case CD, and the character running off, is kind of supposed to be a second into third act activity. But in the first two acts, the characters have to like try and get to know each other. So it needs to be like a disguise and a misconception. And this movie actually does pull a lot from another Cinderella story in the ways that like Charlie actually does try to reveal to Katie that he is Rags. Like he tells her, he full on builds up the courage and says it, but she has her earphones in listening to the demo, so she doesn't hear him. Like she doesn't even go like, what did you say? Like she just fully just pretends that whole thing didn't happen, and he gets insecure and doesn't want to try doing it again. In the same way that Mary did with Joey Parker. Although she does eventually work up the courage to actually tell him at her step-sibling's birthday party, because that movie actually has the whole ball and the dropping of the MP3 player be the thing that shifts us into the second act. I think that's why I like Another Cinderella Story so much, and I feel like I didn't articulate my enjoyment of that movie enough in that video, because some people were like, of course you like the one that you saw when you were a kid, which yes, obviously. I don't even need to, I think, have more thoughts on the movie for that to be okay enough of an opinion, because you could just disagree with me. Like, you can disagree with me even on this whole opinion that I have, that like, these movies are commenting on the idea of Cinderella and not the fairy tale. Like, You can disagree with me on that, and I'd love to hear your eloquent and thought out opinions in the comments below on it. But they're at least taking the story and doing something a little bit more unique with it. Like I said, all of these movies make them rom-coms, but have problems with the whole, you know, they meet each other for the first time at the ball kind of element of it. So every single story, if they even dare to put in a fancy dance that they all go to, have to try and obscure the Cinderella character through the means of it being a masquerade party and such. I just find it interesting. That's all. I'm not mad at it. I'm okay with it. It's fine. It's just that I would love to see a version of Cinderella set in the modern day where they don't have to do this whole masquerade thing or like hidden identity thing. They could just have it be that the characters meet for the first time at the ball. I feel like that would be kind of fun and interesting. I feel like there's a way to do it. It might take a little bit more work than probably the writers for these movies and shows are allowed to have. Not enough time. They probably have very quick turnarounds for these scripts is my thought process. Next thing that I like, and that I probably would not like in any other circumstance, and that is Katie Worth as a character. As I was watching this movie and just absorbing this extremely cliche storyline with this character about how she wants to live her truth and doesn't like the pop slop that she's been forced to perform, I couldn't help but really sympathize with her and actually understand the character more. And I'm purely chalking this up to Keke Palmer's performance alone. There's something about her, man. I just like believe everything that she says, and I'm rooting for her at the end of the day. Maybe it's because Keke just plays this character so earnestly, just like with not a shred of like irony or self-doubt or sadness or anything like that. Just so openly. I feel like it really makes the character work in a way that maybe if played by another actress, it would not have worked as much. Her arc is very cliche and relatively underdeveloped. I think the whole element with her father is not done very well, which will lead me to my next point. Her whole thing is that she doesn't like what she has to do in her career. She doesn't like the songs, she thinks that they're shallow pop crap, and she doesn't like her outfits. She thinks that they're very uncomfortable and restricting her creativity. Like, it's not her creative vision to be wearing these extravagant looks. I'll have more thoughts on this rhetoric in the music section of the video, so hang tight, y'all. But her father is very protective of her and wants to ensure that she has a good career. Just realized I'm like not angled how I want to be. And so we're supposed to understand that the father figure is not just a pure villain in this story, that he is understanding of the character, but is just very strong-headed in what he's decided is what's going to be best for her. And he just has to learn to be okay with his daughter doing what she wants to do with her own musical career, whether or not it will lead to success or whatever. And he does learn this, but completely off screen. We have that final scene of them where she's like, I want you to help me find Rags, and he goes, no, I don't want to. You need to be focusing on your career. And she goes, you don't care about my career. And they have a fight about how she wants to sing her own songs and dress the way she wants to dress. And he explains why she can't, and then she storms off to go find Rags, and then the rest of the plot becomes about that, and he just disappears until the final two scenes in the movie. When he comes back, he's done a complete 180 on his opinions, and is completely fine with supporting Katie in everything that she wants to do. At the auditions, he shows up, and she thinks he's going to try and shut it down, but he says, no, if this is important to you, then I'll be there for you. Now, all they really had to do was just add in like a little scene where after their previous fight, he just like looks longingly at her and looks like has regret over how he responded to the situation. And I feel like that would have fixed everything. Just like one little 5-second lingering scene where he realizes after that conversation that he's been wrong the whole time. And then maybe it would have made sense. The switch just kind of feels like it happens out of nowhere because we don't get to see it as an audience. Same thing at the very end when Charlie performs and everyone's like, yay, yay, we found our big star. He then goes to Katie and it's like, perform your original song. And she's like, I can't because my father won't let me. And then he just goes, nah, go ahead and do it. And then she can do it. And I don't know, it just kind of feels like since we only had like 3 to 5 minutes left in the movie, we just had to hand wave away all of her problems. And that her problems actually didn't end up mattering that much at the end of the day. Which they didn't. Again, I sympathized with the character, but I could see a lot of people not fucking caring. Just like, oh, you're a spoiled rich girl who just wanted to sing your own songs and hated the fact that you had a #1 single. Like, whatever. But I don't know. I really feel for the character because of Keke's performance, and also just because, in general, I really do think that there is a motif of like being your true self, being honest with yourself, and things in the world are holding you back from doing that, and you have to be able to break free from it. It's a very generic, theme to have in a movie, but it is a kid's movie, so that's fine. And also, if it does it well, who cares if it's cliche, right? Again, this movie isn't trying to do anything too extreme with its production. It's just trying to be a good version of a simple story, and that's fine. It insists upon itself. Since we're speaking about things that I feel like just disappear in certain chunks of the movie because it just needs to, I think the piano plotline should have come back at least one more time by the end of the movie. After the scene with Charlie and Katie singing at the piano together, which, by the way, they sung together, so you might think that Katie would recognize Charlie's voice from the demo since they sung together, but I'm just gonna say that she didn't really notice it because they were they were harmonizing together, so she couldn't really hear his voice as much. So we're not gonna worry about that plot hole, okay? We're just not going to, because it doesn't matter at the end of the day. We see that the whole reason why Charlie gets this job as a janitor is so he can raise more money to be able to pay for his mother's piano and buy it back from the pawn shop, because originally he was just getting whatever change he could get off the side of the street from playing his songs with his ukulele. Again, we'll talk about it in the music section. But after that, it's just completely dropped fully. We never hear about the piano again. We never go back to the pawn shop. We don't even see the pawn shop owner, who is kind of a friend of Charlie's because he's always there playing the piano and dropping change off to try and buy it. I don't know, I feel like some big reveal at the end of him playing the piano with Katie or something would have been nice. That final scene where they have their triumphant dance sequence. I feel I don't know, if we could have just also seen a little montage of them playing the piano together in the restaurant. There's a name for the restaurant. It's called the Palace or something. I don't know. Because we get a little montage during that song where we see that the stepfather and Andrew are scrubbing toilets, because we have to leave the haters weeping, which I appreciate. I do like that little angle. I feel like we could have also included the piano, just again as a little reference, hey, he got the piano back kind of thing. I don't know. I feel like that would have meant more than him having it be revealed to him that he actually owns the restaurant, that it's actually his and not his father's. Because the two chefs at the restaurant, at least I think they're the two cooks who work at the restaurant. As far as I'm aware, that's their role. They're the two people who work at the restaurant, basically. They're the ones who revealed it to Charlie, and they've been friend characters of Charlie's this whole time. So you think, why would they just be revealing this now, kind of thing? There really is no excuse. There is no excuse for why he only finds out this information at this point. It's not like we learned that they were being blackmailed to not tell him or anything. Hey, so I'm actually not that smart. In reality, it is actually Andrew, the redeemed step-sibling, that is actually the person who reveals to Charlie that he is the owner of the palace. It is not the two characters that I'm going to talk a little bit about right after this. Also, the palace seems to be more of a performance hall, a place where you go to see performances and stuff, but they just happen to have food, so I keep calling it a restaurant. It's not really a restaurant. It's more of a performance hall that also has a food area. These are two characters I actually did not mention at all in the recap because they actually don't work as characters. They're kind of supposed to also be fairy godmother inserts, the guy, they're married, first of all, the two people are married, and the guy is the one who fixes the bike because he likes to collect trash off the side of the street and fix it up. He fixes up the bike for Charlie to ride, and the lady makes the suit for him, and we never knew that she was good at sewing or good at making dresses before, but she does. She just makes him the suit, and so that's the function that they fulfill in the movie, as well as just being people that he can talk with and have camaraderie with at his job. My opinion on this is that they should have all of these characters should have been consolidated into one. To talk about Drake Bell more, which is unfortunate, I actually do think his character should have been in the movie more, which is a shocking thing for me to say, that I want more Drake Bell in this movie. Since he's supposed to be the main fairy godmother character, and he is the character we first meet, and since he's even the narrator of this movie, so it's to imply that his character has even a more mystical presence within the film, it would just make more sense if he did all of those tasks for Charlie. I'm glad that this character has nice people he can talk to and all, and I don't think that that's a bad thing at the end of the day. I think I said it was a bad thing in my previous video. Like, Cinderella's life should just be so dog shit that she has no one except the fairy godmother who just appears out of nowhere to be nice to her. I'll retract that statement a little bit. It's okay if they have friends and people who are nice to them. But at the end of the day, I just feel like all three of these characters get so little development, and it would have helped a lot more if they were just all one. Like I said, all just in Drake Bell, since he's the first character we meet who is supposed to fulfill this role for Charlie. So what happens is that Charlie gets an invitation to the party, to the ball, right? And then his stepfather steals it from him and decides to take him and his stepsons to the event. So Charlie gets an invitation to the ball from Katie, and his stepfather steals it for him and takes his sons off to the party. What we should then see is Charlie talking about this with Drake Bell. His character's name is Sean. I've just been calling the character Drake Bell throughout this whole video. Charlie should then go to Drake Bell and be like, hey, I can't go to the ball anymore. Or Drake Bell's like, you should come to the ball with us. Well, he's like, you know, at work or whatever. And so then that's when Drake Bell should then plot to get Charlie over there by getting him the suit, by getting him the outfit, and getting him the bike or whatever to go. And giving him another invitation so he can actually enter. Because when he gets there, he has to try and like sneak his way into the party, and they just kind of hand wave away the fact that they couldn't think of anything clever for that scene. He tricks the bodyguard into believing that someone else was talking crap about him, so that bodyguard would just leave to go beat up that guy, and he's like, I can't believe that worked, and then just gets in. It's fine, because it's like, in the original stories, the person is invited, and it's just, their outfit is destroyed by the step-siblings, so that's why they can't go, and that's when the fairy godmother shows up to, like, dress up the character. But she's invited, because it was the fact was that every female was invited to go to the party. So I just feel like that would have tightened things up a little bit more. Obviously, everything still functions just fine in the story. Like, none of this needs to be the case. But if it was, it would be an even more exceptionally good film. Because after that, Drake Bell just disappears for the rest of the movie. After the ball scene where he's the DJ and he gets Charlie to get up on stage and sing a song, we basically never see him again. And what's funny about this is that Katie hosts an entire statewide audition to try and find Rags. And Sean, Drake Bell's character, knows that he's Rags, and he wants Charlie to be successful. He wants him to be a big star, which is why he's been helping him out all throughout the movie. And he seems to want Charlie to succeed, even when Charlie doesn't want himself to succeed. Like, he doesn't want to get up on stage because he's afraid of his stepfather finding out, but he still convinces him to go up on stage anyways, just saying, oh, well, you can just still wear your disguise. So it kind of makes no sense that he just disappears throughout the film, because you would think that if Drake Bell's character was aware that this contest was happening, he would just immediately go tell Katie. And they work in the same building together, so he could have just easily done it. So because of that, his character just disappears from the movie for that whole chunk. And it's a good chunk. You can feel his absence, because he was kind of popping up here and there in every other scene to kind of like talk to Charlie. I think the smallest thing they could have just done is, again, have a moment where Charlie just tells him, don't tell anyone that I'm Rags, okay? Because of all of his personal hang-up and reasons and stuff. And if that guy just went, okay, I won't tell anyone, then I think it all would have been fine. But yeah, the movie at the very end goes very fast. It goes very quickly. They spent a lot of the movie giving like romantic and like bonding scenes with Katie and Charlie, which I like because I love rom-coms and it's a very rom-com thing to do. But it does leave the film and a less space for plot. I'm someone who doesn't really care about plot that much. I'm okay with a lack of plot if we get more character development. But yeah, if the goal of Drake Bell's character was to be somebody who helped Charlie, he definitely didn't help him at all in that scene. The two like random best friend characters of Katie are even the ones to help Charlie out of the closet. Not in that way, of course. What if Drake Bell was there and he's the one who helped Charlie escape to then, go talk to Katie? Again, it would just be another example of him serving the function that his character is supposed to serve within the movie. The thing about fairy tales is that the characters don't need to be well developed because it's about pushing a message at the end of the day. The whole point of Cinderella is that if you are a hardworking person and you do the right thing no matter what, you will be rewarded at the end. Even if you're really upset with the life you're currently living, eventually the universe and the world will make things right for you and you will get your happy ending. So at the end of the day, all of those characters are just like paper dolls fulfilling that role for the actual like story, the message that is trying to be portrayed to usually the child who is hearing this. But since we're making these movies, and movies are understood to have a coherent plot line and characterization and evolution from characters, then things have to be fleshed out a little bit more. And I expect more from the characters. Because in the Cinderella movie from 1950 from Disney, like, the fairy godmother is only in the movie for like 3 minutes. She just appears out of nowhere and it's just like, here you go, and then just disappears, and she never comes back ever again. And that's all she needed to do for that movie, and it's fine, it works perfectly. All she was there to do was give Cinderella one good night, and that's what she did. But since we're making a modern adaptation, and the modern adaptation is supposed to be a fully functional film, then the fairy godmother character, I think, needs to mean more. Needs to be a good friend who is just honestly looking out for our main character. And in Drake Bell's case, it's because he wants to support up-and-coming artists. So you'd think he'd be doing everything that he possibly could to make sure that this person becomes a big star. But the movie just gets distracted near the end. But that doesn't mean it like doesn't work. It still works. It's just, these are just things I wanted to note. Essentially nitpicks at the end of the day. Anyways, let's talk about the music. You guys excited to talk about the music? Because I am. This movie, of course, had an original soundtrack with songs that I bet people remember because they were absolutely blasted throughout a lot of the film and also throughout like the commercials. So even if you didn't watch this movie, if you're watching Nickelodeon around this time, you probably distinctly remember the song Someday, which is like the big song from this movie.
He's a kid who's never been noticed.
Charlie, I don't pay you to waste your time.
You don't pay me at all.
She's a star who's never been heard.
Biggest record of your career, and you're getting distracted.
You're not listening.
But together, they might just be the next big thing. The hit movie Rags premieres the 24th of September, only on Nickelodeon.
The production and the style of all of these songs are extremely 2012. They're so 2012. Right down to the ukulele and everything. Yeah, the ukulele of all things dates these songs the most. But this was at least an honest effort for Nickelodeon because a lot of their songs, in my opinion, had felt very dated in the past. I mean, Someday is the I Want song, and at the end of the day, the movie, I think, does attempt to follow more of a musical structure than like a lot of these other Cinderella adaptations have. In that previous video, I said that all the movies are musicals, but like they aren't really. At least a lot of them aren't. All of these films are diegetic in the sense that most of the time the songs that are being performed are performances that are happening in the movie. But this movie does have one single moment as an exception, and that is the pawn shop song. They break out into a full-blown like musical dance number, which doesn't really make sense in the context of the movie. It kind of does because Charlie is performing a song in the pawn shop, which is something we understand that he does quite often. But all of the background shoppers all of a sudden become like expert dancers and do a little dance number with him. So to me, that feels very non-diegetic, very movie musical, you know? And like I said, Someday kind of functions as the I Want song. The song literally goes, someday I'm gonna be the next big thing. He isn't outright saying, I want to do this, like all of those Disney Renaissance movies do. But it is like stating what the character wants, which is to be a successful musician. Can I just say, the line in the chorus is funny when I actually think about it. It goes, I follow my dreams. You'd think they were nightmares the way they scream. I'll make you believe that someday, I'm gonna be the next big thing. What does it mean? Why are his dreams nightmares? Or why would the audience presume that they are nightmares? Is that like to say that like they're kind of sinister? Or is it just that it's just trying to emphasize how strong his dreams are, that they're very intense, like a nightmare? I think it's the latter, but it's not the most effective way to convey that. All of Charlie's other songs are basically just about hitting the club. I think of the song like It's Tonight or something, whatever it's called, where it's literally just about being in the club. He's like, here I go off to the club, and I'm like, boy, you're supposed to be in high school. I actually find that very funny. He mentions having to go to school like very passingly once, and that's it forever. So I'm like, I guess the characters are all high school aged. I would have been okay with them all just being like young adults, like in their 20s or whatever. Like, they didn't need to be in school, but I think it was just supposed to be understood that they're like teenagers, so that they're still children, so that the children watching the movie can maybe try and relate to them easier. I don't know. But it honestly would make more sense if they were all just grown-ups. But like, you can just pretend that they are if you just ignore that extremely passing comment. I find it very funny that this was right at the point of the club boom of music and pop songs. Like, every single pop song was about going to the club, and specifically how you're broke at the club or whatever. None of these songs specifically are about being broke or anything, but you can kind of pick up on the energy, like the scrappy energy of the musician singing it, because that's kind of the place that Charlie is in this movie. So yeah, I just find it really funny that, yeah, all these songs are about going to the club, because it's like Nickelodeon is just trying to write pop songs, and that's what all the pop songs are about. So you just have all these Nickelodeon songs about going to the club. I don't think their audience of like 10 to 20-year-olds are going to the club that often, is all I'm trying to say. I think there was a song made for How to Rock by Symphonique that was like about going to the club, like it's all about tonight at the club or whatever. I kind of been listening to that song a little bit because I've just been really trying to get into this era of Nickelodeon music to try and understand it. But let's talk about Katie Worth's songs throughout the movie. The first song we hear from her is I Hate You, I Love You, and this is the song that she hates because she thinks it's just very shallow and is like not really representative of what she wants to talk about. And I mean, it is a pretty decent pop song, and throughout all of her scenes where she's like living her career as a pop star, I just kept feeling within me like such joy and elation of like thinking about how people would analyze her career if she was a real pop star, like in universe, how like the music critics would be like talking about her career, like in a post-poptimism world, of course, which we're not really in yet by 2012, which is a topic I don't have a lot of time to get into because this is a video about a movie and not about pop music. I just have to follow my impulses in wanting to talk about pop music because I can't help myself, because it's one of my many hobbies that I have. This whole like pop music is inherently shallow and doesn't really mean anything is something that a lot of these movies try to contend with, because they decide to have their main characters, who we're supposed to like and sympathize with, be pop stars. So it's a constant struggle that they have to deal with, where they have to make these stars be like believable pop stars for their generation, but the writers have a deep disdain for pop music and anything that it represents, so they have to make the main character dislike pop music, the thing that they're doing, and not believe it as true music that they actually want to be creating. They do this in Let It Shine as well, which has Coco Jones in the lead, and famously they also did this kind of in Radio Rebel, which I talked about for 80 minutes on my channel. Go check it out. It's one of my favorite videos I've ever made. Even though there's a lot of editing quirks and issues, I still find it to be a really good film. A really good video I made about a really good film as well. I am a staunch defender of Radio Rebel, if you weren't aware. But anyways, so all of Katie's songs that she writes that she actually wants to perform about are about wanting to be herself, and they're all boring acoustic songs. When she performs that song, I think it's called Stand Out, at the very end of the movie, and everyone's like, woo, yeah, this is so good. It is so boring that it doesn't come across, because she's just singing this boring acoustic song, and she's trying to do like the pop star, like, you know, thing where she's like walking around, like singing it passionately, and all the audience is like, yeah, like grooving along to it, but it's an acoustic song. Like, people don't do this when Ed Sheeran performs. I feel like she should have been sitting on a stool with an acoustic guitar in her hand, just singing passionately, and everyone should be there thoughtfully sitting there going, this is really deep, even though it's not really that deep. Because the thing about these generic pop songs that are supposed to be in contrast with the real deep thinky songs that they perform at the end is that they're all being written by the same people who can't write anything that's not generic for these movies. Again, probably because they're on a huge time crunch. I always want to give credit to the writers at the end of the day and discredit the companies, because it's more likely management just like didn't give them enough time to really flesh this out, or they don't value the job of writing random songs for a made-for-TV movie to be like something that is worth their best material. Hate You, Love You, again, if I'm going to be a fictional music critic within the fictional universe of Rags, this is kind of how I would respond, because the thing about all these pop stars is that the songs that they're releasing actually do say things about their career and subtle angles that or maybe like you can be dissected. It's like a story that these artists are telling. That is a beautiful thing that pop music can do and can function as, Each album cycle is an era with different visuals and different storytelling mechanisms. And so there's this really cheeky scene where she's talking to an interviewer about her new song, and what's his fucking name? God, I love Ivan Jogia in this movie, and he's probably one of the most standout, like, memorable things about this movie, but his character literally has no stakes in the film. Like, he doesn't do anything, like, tangible. Finn immediately cuts her off and is like, of course she loves the song, because she actually kind of wants to be honest with the interviewer and say she's not really that jazzed about it. But Finn interrupts her, knowing that this is probably going to happen, and he goes, of course she loves the song, of course it's about her and deeply relatable to her, except for the part where she talks about how much she hates me, right? Like, it's kind of like a little cute moment in the film where I feel like it subtly conveys that the song actually does have real meaning to her character in the story. She loves being a musician and a performer, but she hates the things that has to come with it, which is inauthenticity. And obviously it could also just more surface level apply to her PR relationship. As far as everyone else is aware, it's a real relationship. And so I could see the music critics writing in their little newspapers or blogs or whatever people did in 2012 being like, I wonder what this says about the Katie-Finn relationship. I wonder if this is actually a representation of how her relationship is going. And the fact that very soon after that song drops and it goes to #1 and all that stuff, she breaks up with him because she's like, I'm sick of being in this PR relationship with you. You suck. We're done. Like, the relationship is over. And then I'm assuming that means that, like, everyone's aware that they've broken up, and then she gets together with this, like, scrappy, poor kid on the streets of New York, and then starts singing about being authentic or whatever. It would be a very interesting, like, story arc for the artist of Katie Worth, is all I'm trying to say. Also, just the whole thing with Rags, his whole thing, you know what I mean? Like, the whole drama of him performing and being mysterious. It's almost kind of like The Weeknd in a way, where, like, most people didn't know what his identity was when he was dropping those mixtapes. There was, like, a lot of mystery behind him as a musician. I feel like in a similar way, it kind of builds up that kind of storyline for Rags. He should definitely just change his stage name to his actual name. Charlie Prince is a great name for a musician. So I don't really spin the soundtrack as often as I do, like, the Radio Rebel soundtrack or the Schoolgirl soundtrack. Again, still love the Schoolgirl soundtrack, one of my favorites. I've never actually seen the movie Schoolgirls. Can I make an honest admission here? And will you guys promise not to judge me about this? I didn't know that the Schoolgirls were like a fake girl group. As in, like, I didn't know that they were a girl group made up by Nick Cannon and Nickelodeon to then, like, for, like, a movie. Like, I didn't know that they were cast as, like, characters in a movie. Like a Big Time Rush situation. I didn't know that, like, I just thought they were a real girl group that a record label made up and then, like, put out there. And the theming was that they were, like, schoolgirls. And then I thought that the album art was a really good replication of, like, a movie poster. And I thought that that was, like, the point, was that it was, like, a replication of a movie poster. But then I found out it was an actual movie poster. And that they were probably cast as, like, actors and singers for this movie. Also, I didn't know the movie had Justin Bieber in it. And I still haven't seen it to this day. So should I watch the Schoolgirls movie and make a video on it? Let me know, because I have a very unique relationship with them that literally probably no one else has. Because I thought they were a band, like a real band first, not like a fictional band created for a movie. Anyways, we were talking about Rags. To give my final thoughts on Rags, this movie knows what it is. In my opinion, for a movie to know what it is, it has to care about its existence in the first place, which I can attest is not necessarily the case for a lot of movies. This is why I like to praise movies like this so publicly. Because for a movie to excel, even in the most basic of ways, in an environment like this and for a specific audience, which is in this case children, is an incredible feat to do, and it shows the creativity of the creators behind the project. The fact that the wish fulfillment and joyous excellence is allowed to thrive is very fun. Charlie and Katie can want love and want to pursue an honest version of it and have that be okay within the movie. I know that's a silly thing to point out since so many of these movies are about love or have romantic subplots in them, and for 2012 it's not like it's necessarily a revolutionary thing. Rom-coms had not been shot dead out back after a slow and long bloodletting quite yet, and movies especially from Disney hadn't been plagued with the sickness of having the main female lead want to find love be a bad thing actually. To quote Taylor Swift, movies hadn't girl-bossed too close to the sun quite yet. So obviously, to me now in 2026, this movie feels more fresh than it probably did in 2012. So I can recognize that in my review and know that it's going to be biased at the end of the day. Y'all are just gonna have to deal with that, I guess. Keke Palmer does a great job as the lead in a rom-com, and I think she should do another one soon, honestly. A sad part of me wonders if she would have had as big of a career if she was a child star now in our current world, and it makes me sad to think about what the answer would be. There aren't that many movies that depict a dark-skinned black woman being successful and ending her movie being happy and in love. At least not many that I can think of on the top of my dome. How her and her father are depicted throughout this movie as black Americans is not something I can comment too much on since I'm not black, so I would love to hear from somebody who knows more about the nuances of the seemingly colorblind casting like this one, and how that changes or evolves the story in ways I may have missed. I'd love to hear that in the comments below. Keke Palmer is a national treasure and is literally the voice of Gen Z. Half of the most well-known phrases from young people are either from or about her in some way. Also, Max is still a working musician and has some pretty decent hits recently as well. He collabs and writes songs for many popular artists, and he also did so while he was working with Nick, so it's very possible you've heard him or his songwriting somewhere before without even knowing it. So to conclude this video, I like Rags because it's a decent, fun movie that doesn't feel the need to try to do anything too ambitious or not care and just run on autopilot. I don't need a movie to be upscale and reinvent the wheel or anything, I just need it to insist upon itself actually being worthy of my time. I'm done with the video now. But by the way, guys, I had a very quick and random occurrence happen while I was working on this video. I had already watched the movie, and I knew it was then time to gather clips to show in this video. And I was kind of like trying to think how I would do that, and I was like, well, maybe I'll buy a DVD of the movie because, I mean, I like this movie and it'll be a good thing to own on DVD. And I remember that a colleague of mine from the Mabalosphere, as we like to call it, I'm not leaving that in. I remembered that a friend of mine who I am mutuals with because of My Babysitter's a Vampire had sent me a link to an Amazon listing for the Big Time Movie and Rags double feature DVD set. And I remember bookmarking it. So I was like, I probably still have that bookmark saved. And so I went to it, and then it said that I already purchased it. And so then I looked in my massive stack of DVDs, and yeah, I had it. I've had it the whole time. So, take a gander at that, right there. Oh, it's focusing on Carlos, interesting. So yes, this movie, Rags, was only ever really released as this double feature with Big Time Movie. And I owned it this whole time, and I didn't even know. So anyways, I just wanted to show this off. If I knew I had this while I was recording this whole time, I would have showed it off, but I only just found out now and decided to pop back in to show you guys. Look at that, it's even on one disc. They didn't even make 2 discs for it like other things would. So, anyways, that's all. Bye.